This is 194th day of the Ukrainian resistance. This is the Media Center Ukraine in Ukrinform. My name is Vasil Samokhvalov. So our guest is Hryhoriy Plachkov, the former head of the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate. That is 2017-2021, right? Yes. So we will be speaking about such an important topic as Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, nuclear safety, security, IAEA mission, and so on. Hryhoriy, the first question. Could you please explain, as an expert for non-experts, what was the mission, which could be the outcomes, which could be the conclusions? How do you assess it directly as an expert? As an expert, thank you for the question. As an expert, I would still assess this mission positively, as the mission still came and approached Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in more than 5 months. There is the information that some of them are still staying there. 2 experts are staying further to work in Zaporizhia NPP. So on the one hand, this is a rather positive issue and moment and point, because the inspection had to understand 3 main points. That is non-proliferation of the nuclear material, which is rather numerous at Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in different forms and shapes, both as a fresh nuclear fuel and the worked one. And the second is the resources and capacities of the staff of the NPP, whether they will have enough of the moral psychological resources to perform as they used to do and how they do now, and to get in order the physical protection of this nuclear object. With some of the conclusions which were presented by Mr. Grossi, you may, well, at least debate or communicate. And I would just communicate about some of the issues, but in my opinion, let's wait for the report itself, and then we will criticize it and agree or disagree with it. If you've got any questions, let me know. I've got the questions, well, I've got 2 of them. I don't know whether I can ask them simultaneously or not. Firstly, how can we provide the security and safety of the functioning of this as ZNPP? And secondly, how can we impact Russia? Answering your first question, this is the full deoccupation and demilitarization of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, because the location of the military men, servicemen and heavy armament at Zaporizhia NPP violates all the possible and impossible international requirements and international documents. As for the question number 2, the nuclear power plant is not designed during the combat warfare, or it cannot be redesigned during the actions around the NPP. First, the troops should be withdrawn, then we should create some kind of demilitarized zone of 10 to 30 kilometers, and then have totally legal, technical and regulation control to our state of Ukraine. Are there any questions? Please.
There's been a suggestion that the most responsible thing would be to cycle down the 2 reactors and then go from there. And I understand the Ukrainian government does not want to do that, and for a variety of reasons. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. I think the U.S. nuclear regulator wouldn't allow a nuclear plant to operate without the 750 megahertz cables. So if you could just tell me how you see that.
Так, дійсно, в експертному.
Yes, really, the experts community have such a discussion that it would be much more secure to use the nuclear power plant where all of the energy blocks are in the cool mode or cooled, or to have 1 or 2 blocks with a certain capacity to have your own needs, and secondly, not to let the Russians to reconnect Zaporizhia nuclear power plant to the Crimea, or to connect it to the energy system of Russian Federation. But with each new line which is disconnected at the nuclear power plant, the scenarios can get rogue. They can get in a different way, either, well, beyond the design. Those scenarios really looked like what it took place in 2011 at the nuclear power plant Fukushima, where they also had the cut-off of power, where the diesel generators were flooded, they were not working, but there were some other factors which were more of natural nature, that is tsunami and earthquake. Here the factor is a different one: shellings, servicemen, heavy armament, and other reasons which is taking place, other atrocities taking place in Zaporizhia NPP. Thank you. Victoria Nakonechna, Ukrinform. According to your opinion, what is the practical effect of the expected permanent presence of two experts of IAEA at NPP? Well, first of all, we'll have full information what is really taking place there, because there are lots of informational announcements of Russia, for instance. So still, international agency has the technical mandate from the United Nations. So I think that if the report is enough and honest and frank, it can become a platform, first of all, for the withdrawal of Russians and suspension of Russians from the decision-making in the international organizations. And secondly, this is the foundation for the sanctions on such state corporations as Rosatom, the Russian corporation, because we know that the representatives of Rosatom were not only at Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, but at Chernobyl as well, where they signed some kind of fake act, fake document. And in my opinion, it could also become a kind of foundation for rather heavy international diplomatic sanctions for Russian Federation. At the level for the usual people, for just anyone, could you please tell what could be the consequences of shellings? Sometimes there are some of the mechanisms which are working, some of the security systems which are working in case of shelling. But what is the threat that those systems do not work, and which could be the negative scenarios? I will not draw any apocalyptic scenarios, because according to the assessment of some of the experts, the situation at ZNPP can also touch 40 countries and approximately 1 billion people on the planet. But still, I consider that the situation is developing how it used to develop at Fukushima station. Still, there is some difference. First, the nuclear power block is of the different type. Electrical power units are of different type, and power generating unit as well. And Ukraine has modernized and prolonged the exploitation term for 5 of the 6 power generating units. So we introduced so-called post-Fukushima measures, but still the situation at the NPP is rather tense and complicated. And at the Japanese nuclear power plant, they had 4 power units, and in Zaporizhia we have 6 of them, so the risks are much higher. Are there any other questions?
Japanese broadcaster. What specific changes or improvement that the IAEA was able to bring about compared with before their presence?
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
What are the changes on the site was able to brought about by IAEA presence? Is there any good things that the IAEA was able to bring?
First of all, the Director General, Mr. Grossi, acknowledged that the physical protection of the object is violated, and we could see from the footage of Reuters how the Russian expert, who, by the way, we don't know what he is doing there at our nuclear power plant, he was logically telling about some of the shells which are turning back when they are shelled and so on. That was total nuisance. And secondly, he brought the morale state of the employees into the yellow-red colors But I would say that their morale is red. Only red, because I don't understand what he meant by the unique cooperation of Russian and Ukrainian staff. And thirdly, what I disagree with is the regulating control from our state at the NPP that it is lost. It is also the red indicator. It is a very dangerous one. So the external power, reserve power blocks of the systems of the NPP are also the red-yellow specter. But still, this is already the first conclusions in those 7 pillars which he presented at his press conference. So in Vienna, it seems. So I wouldn't be hasty about his conclusions and about the reports of the IAEA and in the UN, which we'll hear soon. What are the further actions of Ukraine? Does it depend or doesn't it depend on the IAEA report? In my opinion, we need to shape the pool, and we already had it on the Conference of Non-Proliferation of the Nuclear Power, but Russia did not sign the final document. And we have the announcement of the 42 powerful countries, which don't only have nuclear power, well-developed one, but also nuclear weapons, about the instant, immediate. It's not just some concerns, which they used to be, but this is the announcement with the requirement to bring the NPP back to the jurisdiction of Ukraine. And secondly, sanctions. In my opinion, such a huge corporation as Rosatom, which has a huge investment package, not only in the construction of new nuclear power generating units, but also in the provision of fuel and in the enrichment of uranium, it seems to me that it will lead to rather substantial effect onto Russian Federation. Thank you so much. If there are no questions left, we will finalize this briefing. We had Hryhoriy Plachkov here, the ex-head of the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate 2017-2021. We were speaking about Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and the IAEA mission. Our next briefing will take place at 1 p.m. We'll be speaking with Denis Marchuk, Deputy Chair of the Ukrainian Agrarian Council, about the first month of the grain